Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audiotrial.com/beat and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/BEAT.
Oh boy. I think after watching this, I've never felt as dirty as a man as I have like now. Because this movie, it tries to present itself in such a way that this was kind of not necessarily like acceptable behavior, but like, you could get away with so much of it up to an extent, right? You know, but then this happens, and it's like, okay, the line is crossed. Now what? This is a Me Too movie, like all around. Welcome back to Back to the Classics, the cinematic movie podcast. Takes you back to the iconic movies 20 years ago. Here on the Big Three: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. I am your host, Danger Neff, and with me is my partner in crime when Jay decides to take a month off. Lund Hairston.
That's right. It is Leland H. Hairston. Leland Thomas Hairston in the house.
What's going on, man? How are you? Look at you. You look fresh.
Oh, I feel
well slept.
Kind of fuzzy, actually.
Yeah.
I got my Rona beard and my messy fro, so.
I kind of like the Rona beard, though. I think it really matches. It reminds me of high school, you know, because you and I go back to high school and kind of see. You didn't really have the beard back then, but like your fro is like top notch, like perfect right at this point.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. I feel like I use a trim though, but.
So how you been, man?
Weird. I haven't had it, you know, as bad as some, but it's still not great. So I think it's settled in weird.
Right.
Yeah.
How is the Rona treating you?
Well, I haven't gotten it, so
that's a good thing.
Yeah, that part's pretty good. You know, wear your masks, social distance, y'all.
Yeah, we here at Beat, we just launched. At least the Noise has launched like their merchandise, and like part of that merchandise is some of their masks. Make sure you go check that out at beatnetworkonline.com. And yeah, I've been kind of on this like JFK kick.
Oh, nice.
So those people who know me know that I'm not really big into conspiracy theories, and the reason why is because somewhere down the line, the hole gets too deep for you to dig yourself out, right?
Yeah.
So I was listening over this is probably like the last like 3 months or so. I've been listening to the guys at the last podcast on the left, and they presented like this 6-part series on Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassination of JFK, Jack Ruby, all the cover-ups and everything there, and just kind of sorting through all the bullshit. And they came out with the most plausible version of this. I'm not going to spoil it because if you guys can, give it a listen. It is a great 6-part series for those guys. But yeah, man, like afterwards, it was like, it just reminded me, most people don't realize that in the long run, the human race, while we are smart, we are incompetent most of the time. You know, it's like this whole Rona thing, right? I refuse to wear my mask. You know, I don't like that those players are kneeling to the national anthem. You know, I don't consider myself, you know, I'm non-binary and binary and stuff like that. And, you know, they throw stuff in there into like this melting pot. Don't get me wrong, I get it, because what people keep forgetting is that we live through history. It's not just like in the past and then like we're the best versions of ourselves right now. It's the fact that that we're still living in history, and history doesn't always tell like the best part about all of us.
Yeah, I mean, we are the history right now. I mean, we're in this historic time, and I think, it's important to understand the history. I mean, the JFK thing was always kind of crazy because it seems like for all the for all the conspiracies around it, like the most likely thing is Oswald shot JFK and the bullet probably ricocheted and just hit him again. Um,
Right. Yeah.
but I guess that's the Occam's razor answer.
Right. Yeah. You want. I always and I agree with the simplest answer is usually the solution regardless. I love Occam's razor, and it's like I almost kind of want to turn around and present this to people every time they bring up a conspiracy theory. Don't get me wrong. I agree that there's absolute evil into the world. For the most part, I just think that people are just too dumb.
Mm,
Not that I'm calling myself elite or anything, because I get really dumb sometimes, and
hmm
you've proven that over and over in time. No to me. But I just, when thinking about like human history and stuff like that, and even like movie history and acceptable behaviors and whatnot, it kind of gets to the point where you just gotta accept that people and ideas are just dumb, especially in
Yeah.
like horror movies, right?
Well, like right now, everything is a conspiracy.
Of course.
It, just everything. Whether you think you're gonna get sick, you don't think you're gonna get sick, whatever you think about, you know, social issues right now, someone's in on it. I don't know.
Right. So let me ask you this. Leading into the movie that we're actually going to be talking about today, I think how we were thinking as kids during that time, because I was 13.
Hmm.
You would have been 14, right? Because you're a year older than me.
Yeah.
So when looking back on this movie, like now, like I think as kids we liked it, but like watching it now is rough.
No, it's weird because, like, thinking about this movie, the only parts I could really remember were like some of the dirtier parts and then the ending. And that's what most of this movie is. And after watching it, I was kind of like, man, this is rough. There's Once you kind of unpack the things that are really kind of a problem with it, there isn't much going on.
Right, yeah. Especially in today's culture. So let's go ahead and kick this off because we're going to run through this really quick. There's not a lot of movie news to kind of cover outside of the big idea that Disney is officially releasing the live action release of Mulan for $30 on Disney Plus,
Mm.
which I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I feel like it should be like $30 if you don't already have Disney Plus.
Right.
um, I'm up for watching it. Like, if they don't really have a killer, I'll make a man out of you, like remix cover thing, I'll be disappointed. But
Yeah.
besides that, I'm into it.
I mean, no Mushu, no, they're going with the traditional, with the traditional Chinese story instead of what the Disney sign of it is. Which, look, I'm sure it's going to get Chinese audiences,
Oh, of
but
course.
I don't know. I don't know if it's going to have the impact that people think it's going to actually have.
Better
So,
have some kick-ass kung fu in it.
man, you ain't lying there. You ain't
Yeah.
lying. So, we're taking this back to August 4th of 2000. So right on the date, actually, with the Kevin Bacon starring action horror sci-fi thriller, which that's too many adjectives for this movie. Hollow Man.
Yeah. This is Kevin Bacon, Josh Brolin, Elizabeth Shue, directed by Paul Verhoeven.
Mhm.
And I have to say, out of like all the crazy iconic Paul Verhoeven movies,
This
like
one's probably
Starship Troopers and like RoboCop, this doesn't stand up.
no, it doesn't. This is original. Original budget was 95 million for this, with the box office take of 190.2. Um, I can already tell you that I'm pretty sure that the Rotten Tomatoes on this is somewhere in the ballpark range of like 28%.
Yeah,
Do you think that's fair?
that's about right. Like the visuals for the time are still pretty good. Where it's lacking is some of the characterization, I definitely think. So it's
The
not like
writing.
the worst movie you'll ever watch. It's, but it's, yeah, I mean, it's kind of rough.
So, so I wanted to cover this movie, and it does share opening weekend with two other movies I actually enjoy, which is Coyote Ugly
Mm,
and Space Cowboys. Which, if I would have known that Jay would have taken this month off, I probably would have switched out Hollow Man or one of those two because I actually enjoy both of those movies.
yeah, either would be good.
I probably would have covered Space Cowboys because I like the idea. I like the idea that Ad Astra is a spiritual sequel to Space Cowboys, which
Ooh, okay, yeah.
is about to see Tommy Lee Jones, who's stuck on Pluto or something like that.
Right.
um,
Ad Astra or Dad Astra, if
yeah, there you go, Dad Astra.
for the Weekly Planet enjoyers.
Right. And I remember when this movie came out, it kind of it had a little bit of hype because it was inspired by the H.G. Wells 1897 novel Invisible Man.
Right.
Why they didn't call it Invisible Man instead of Hollow Man, I have no idea. I honestly have no idea on that.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's weird, right? Because since the book, the story's so old, there can't really be like I know Universal has something for the Invisible Man, but I don't think any of it's like copyrighted. Like if
I don't think
anyone,
so. I don't
it's
think
like
so.
Sherlock Holmes, right? Anyone can make a story based on it.
Right. So, and it's funny because in 2020 we got kind of the updated version of this movie in The Invisible Man, and I thought that movie was excellent. Like it's a movie that I can like show to people and be like,
Hmm.
this is legitimate terrifying because they commit to the horror of this.
It's a step up from the Tom Cruise Mummy movie.
Yeah. So let's get into this.
Mhm.
The soundtrack for this movie is also really interesting because it had a lot of pulsating piano and woodwinds, and I remember like some of the music I thought was really really dope because it's by Jerry Goldsmith, who also made the music for Total Recall.
Okay, yeah.
So I was really interested to hearing the score because I love the Total Recall soundtrack.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think there's a lot of problems that we're going to talk about with this movie that you're going to find out. And the music, the score just does not like help it at all. You mentioned that this is Verhoeven's probably worst project. Um,
Nothing's helping this movie.
yeah,
There's not. There's really. I mean, there's nudity. I don't know.
there is a shitload of nudity in this movie that really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, you just it's not earned. You feel bad. You feel
Right.
gross.
This film was nominated for an Academy Award for best visual effects. It wasn't special effects back then in 2001,
Mhm.
but it lost to Gladiator, obviously.
Yeah.
There is, for some odd reason, a direct-to-video standalone, Hollow Man 2, starring Christian Slater and Peter Falcinelli. And I don't know, like this movie actually starts out pretty decent because they drop in like this rat into a cage, right? And the rat's kind of going through, which is really interesting because I thought rats had a really keen sense of smell, and I don't
Right.
think this really does anything for smell because you're just invisible, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's always kind of been a question about like all these different kind of versions. So when the Invisible Man like showers, right?
Yeah.
If he's like stalking somebody, he has to leave at some point to go take a shower, right?
Right.
Otherwise, what if he farts? Like, what
Yeah,
if
he's
he
gonna
farts
start
or he has
getting.
bad breath or
Yeah.
something?
He's
You're
gonna
gonna
start getting right.
right.
I
So
mean, with Sebastian's movie, it does seem like he's always getting wet in it. So I feel like showering is probably one of those things he's into.
probably.
Yeah.
So So this rat's dropped into his cage, and the rat goes and sees like a bowl of water, gets there, and you see the rat basically get crushed and then bitten by an invisible pair of bloody teeth that like come out. And
Yeah.
it hands itself out. And mind you, that those teeth, I mean,
It looks like a tiger or something, but
right.
also
But I think
the
they're
thing
implying
grabbed
it's the
him.
gorilla.
Yeah.
They're implying it's the gorilla, right?
I feel like it has to be. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Right. And this movie stars Kevin Bacon as the arrogant scientist Sebastian Crane, who has developed a serum for the military that can turn a subject invisible. Now, here's what cracks me up about this. They decided not to even discuss how they were able to turn somebody invisible at all at any given point into this.
Exactly. In fact, when he's going over the briefing, he says doing it's easy. But if you listen to kind of like the language he uses, he talks about being phase shifted and quantum whatever. So the implication somehow is that you're shifting someone out of time,
Right.
but that makes them invisible. It doesn't, like, you'd think it would put that person on like a second delay or 2 second delay.
Right.
No, he's just invisible. Somehow
Right.
that makes you invisible.
Right. And because that's not how invisibility would work. Like
Yeah.
even the most, they got one thing right with it, which is they talked about eyelids, and if you were invisible and light was technically able to go through you, it wouldn't ever be able to close your eyes. But that also means because your lights automatically give off a little bit of light photons because it reflects out of it, the idea would be is that you would be a silhouette of an invisible person with a pair of eyeballs, like still there. Not fully, it would be dimmed at best.
Oh, sure.
I think that's why I like the Invisible Man 2020 version so much better than this movie, because at least it kind of makes sense. I mean, it still doesn't make sense because you would still be an invisible silhouette because
Right.
it's just camera mirrors reflecting off whatever the vision of yourself is. But at least tries it. This one, they didn't even try to go for the science. Instead,
Yeah, science is so soft that, you can cut it with a bread knife.
which I was really disappointed with, because then they talk about like the dangers of trying to bring somebody back from invisibility, and I remember like sitting there and watching, and I was like, okay, this is really, really cool for 2000 standard.
Right.
This idea of gunning for it. But it's like, man, like, take a little bit of a risk on the science.
Yeah.
Admit to something that you're wrong on, but be wrong. Don't like wash over it.
Well, I mean, really, we know two things about it, right? You can make someone invisible. They couldn't figure out how to bring people back, bring creatures back. And the longer you stay invisible, the crazier you get. Those are the facts of the science.
Which again doesn't really talk about like why something would go so crazy. So anyway, he is joined by Sebastian is joined by his little mixed group of team. And Sebastian, by the way, is an actual genius. He's just also an incel. It really feels like he's just like he is the horniest dude like out there. He's joined by his team, Linda McKay, who's played by Elizabeth Shue, Matt Kensington, who's played by Josh Brolin, Dr. Sarah Kennedy, who is a veterinarian on the team, played by Kim Dickens, Carter Abbey, who was an EMT tech, and then 2 lab techs, Joey Slotnick being one of them. They also have, I think, William Devane is his name for no. Joey Slotnick is like the other guy, and I don't know. They just kind of after a while they're just kind of throwing people in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, Greg Grunberg, right, is the
Yeah. He's the boss, right?
Well, he's like the goober guy.
Yeah.
He's the only person who's kind of like a fan of Sebastian.
Right.
Yeah.
Greg Grunberg. And they show this really great sequence, and I will say this is probably the most iconic scene in this film, because if this movie cost $90 million to make, I'm going to say about 15 million was in creating this scene by itself, which is they take this gorilla that they have, and you could see the gorilla. You could see where the body of the gorilla should be because you're seeing the indent in there.
Yeah.
And they go and they give this reversing effect to the gorilla, and you're seeing the scene, and it's great. It's actually pretty awesome. Like you're seeing like the veins being colored, you see the heart being colored in, and then everything just kind of starts bringing itself back. But in the process, though, the gorilla actually goes into cardiac arrest, which again, I kind of have to wave a white flag here a little bit because it's like, okay, so the gorilla goes through cardiac arrest. What makes you think that your same formula is going to work on you if it can't handle? That's a 600-pound gorilla, 800-pound silverback.
Right.
That's really tame, by the way. Which is really not how gorillas typically act when you stick them with something.
No, it's yeah, I mean, there's weird implications, right? Because before that, we have the scene where he figures out the formula by playing like a puzzle computer game,
right?
After perving kind of like on his like a crossway neighbor that comes up later.
By the way.
Yeah, and then so it's like it works on the gorilla after going through the cardiac event and them sort of resuscitating the gorilla, but so they're like, we cracked it, right?
So the other thing is, and I kind of have to talk about, because it's really like kind of a little bit of a love triangle, is Elizabeth Shue's character. So at some point before the movie ever began, they were in a relationship, but apparently she couldn't. It's not that she didn't like him anymore. It's that she couldn't handle the pressure of like being his girlfriend or something like that.
Yeah.
He was like the genius and she was just kind of like the piece.
Right. Like, so Sebastian is this, and I think this comes in like the first sort of flaw of the movie. This movie's like super 90s, right? Like everyone has snark coming out of every orifice in their face. Everyone's quipping at each other and talking shit and one-upping each other. And Sebastian's just the most intense guy ever. He's a genius. He drives this silver Porsche. He practices using the trank gun on animals between working out equations. They have this weird betting system where Josh Brolin and Kevin Bacon are trying to one-up each other. And
capturing a gorilla.
Right. And capturing a gorilla. And even though like Sebastian is still pining over, Elizabeth Shue's character, Linda, like, which is also trips because I think Elizabeth Shue has top billing in this movie. But he's still pining over her, but she's not really reciprocating, but she's into Matt, who's like the watered down version of him. So it's like before everything goes to shit, there's this idea that maybe she still has a thing, or maybe she'll go, whatever, right? It's like
right.
it's all will they, won't they, and it's reflected in the movie because until shit flips, she's like the only person that's always in his corner, and she's always supportive of him. She's like, when he goes to the procedure, she's sleeping in the chair next to him.
Right, yeah. And no, you hit on some really great points there, because the writing in this movie leaves a lot to be desired. Let me be fair. Okay, scientists don't curse nearly this much. I mean,
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, the word "fuck" is at least dropped close to 100 times in this movie. And it's
they're so extreme. Like you feel like on the weekends they go play paintball and fucking rollerblading or whatever.
Right. That's how I feel. Like, yeah, bro, we're gonna fucking like skydive like afterwards. And I'm like, no, dude, you're gonna fucking research on this shit because you have no social life because you're having a massive breakthrough. You don't go 18 hours to do something else when you just got a major breakthrough, like if I had ever invented something, you think I'm going to invent something and be like, man, I'm really proud that I invented that, and then that's it. No, I'm going to go into fucking mass production, get my fucking patent, show a whole bunch of people, try to sell this shit.
These guys do a lot of really impressive work for how bad they perform the science.
Yeah, and yeah. That's something. The other thing is Josh Brolin's character is a bit dopey, which is weird because he's very attractive. You would think, especially when you consider how Josh Brolin's career's kind of gone afterwards. I mean, he's played epic characters, Cable, Thanos, amongst others, obviously. To kind of see him play this kind of dopey but super ripped dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. It reminds me of you remember Frozen 1? The dude that like owned the coffee shop or like the store or whatever, and it's like super summertime South time, the guy. He reminds me of that because like
right, like
he could probably take Sebastian no problem.
Oh, for sure. Like, the weird thing is, like, this is a time and era where Kevin Bacon's, like, huge, right? So you don't really feel like anyone's one-upping anyone else.
Right.
Or, sorry, no one's one-upping him. But it's, like, it's hard to take this sort of second banana role to him. And it comes up, like, often in the movie.
Right. So as this movie kind of goes through, they go through this meeting with the military. It's this oversight committee, and it's just like, we've given you guys a lot of leniency with this. Okay, here was a problem that I almost immediately had. Hey, yeah, we figured out how to turn people invisible. Great. Have you figured out a way to put them back? We're close with the science.
Right.
And literally, I remember they had like an argument because the argument was that Sebastian had figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. And they were like, dude, you're going to cost us our job. You figured this out. We're good. But no, he hadn't figured it out. He figured out a way to bring back the gorilla, but he doesn't know how to like bring back the gorilla with no complications.
Exactly.
You're coming back to life, but you're also having cardiac arrest in this process. So good luck.
Yeah. It's like everything about this sort of is like a trip, right? Because one, whether they can bring people or not, they've already figured out how to make people invisible. So, like, whatever weird clandestine shit you think the military is going to use that for, they'd be using it already. They'd be like, dope, you figured that out? All right.
Let us know when you figure out how to bring him back.
Like, they're like, oh, dope, like, give us all the video recordings. We're going to add some more people to your team. Let's expand the project, right? And one of the big things is that it's all secret. It's all locked down. There's no, like, they direct communicate with the Pentagon, but they're not, like, giving weekly updates or sharing the actual data, which, I mean, comes in sort of, like, with the climax, but it doesn't really make sense from a certain standpoint. The second thing is, the reason why he tells them they're not ready yet is, one, he wants to be the first person to be invisible, right? And he's like, they're going to take it from us if we tell him. And it's like, dude, you figure out how to make living things invisible, and you figure out how to make at least animals revisible. Like, dude, you're in charge. Like, you're Einstein. You're
take it away from him, basically.
Right. You're Fritz Haber. You're doing, like, no one's taking it away from you, right? Even if you're like, hey, guess what? I figured out how to do it. I want to be the first one to be invisible. They'd probably be like, okay, like, the way they make it sound, besides his, like, his teacher, who's, like, the liaison with the government, like, they're all big dummies anyways. Like,
right, yeah.
So,
like, they're just kind of accepting whatever he's saying. They're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like, dude, thank you. You figured this shit out for me.
Like, the only static is that he's not giving them results, and it's like, you have at least the majority of the result, right? And then they're like, why the hell did you do that? He's just like, oh, we're making history. Like, we haven't done it yet, but we're about to do it. And it's like, nah, dude, you've done it. Like,
Right. So
like, you're just making it harder for you. They'd probably give you more money and more resources if you're just like, yep, we've did a gorilla.
right. So they go through with this procedure, lying to everybody, because it's only the three of them that know this, by the way,
Yeah.
lying to everybody else that about going through human trials, which I really agree with the doctor, with the veterinarian here. Don't get me wrong, she's snarky and sassy and just overall not an enjoyable character to watch. But at least she's right. Like she said in there, she's like, you mean they're just gonna go ahead and go through human trials? Like it's like a red flag. Like, hello, like, no, we're not gonna go straight to human trials like immediately. But whatever, right?
Right. Like, it's pretty obvious that she hates him.
Oh, clearly.
And none of the other researchers, like, none of them, like, even the ones who are kind of giving him credit for being a genius are just kind of like, he's smart, but he's a dick. Like, no one really trusts him. And it's like, at this point, everyone's kind of like giving that, really? They really say you can use it on you?
Right.
Yeah.
So he turns himself invisible, and again, it's a really cool scene to kind of watch everything go through. A couple of things that I don't know if you know this, but Kevin Bacon has literally said this is like one of his hardest roles he had to be a part of, because most of the time he had to be in a green suit, a blue suit, a black suit, or something else.
Yeah.
He gets the scene right, so that he matches up with the scene. And I think they did a pretty good job of at least that idea of it. But the problem is that the impact you're not exactly feeling. So that actually means Kevin Bacon is nude literally for most of this movie.
Yeah.
And the little heat sensor thermal shots that they show of him naked, that's him actually naked. That's like anatomically correct.
Oh.
Naked. So anyways, so Kevin goes naked, and instead of you know, like kind of being positive with this, not that he's not being positive, he turns into a prankster, but he turns into the worst kind of prankster.
Oh my God.
He turns into a giant fucking Harvey Weinstein is what he winds up becoming. It's bad.
I mean, he, you know, like, it's implied that he's like this jerk, right? And then, like, as soon as he's invisible, he's fucking with his team. And then, yeah, the first night.
The first thing he does, right? The first thing he does is, like, he goes invisible and sneaks into the room, and the camera.
This is actually a good effect because the camera tracks where he's supposed to, kind of like at his eyesight.
Sure. So the camera kind of follows him in, where the veterinarian, who doesn't have a life and is taking the night shift to watch over Sebastian, is sleeping in the chair, and she's wearing a cute, you know, purple top, and proceeds to go and molest her. And I mean, like, slowly unbuttoning. She's not thinking anything of it because she's conked out cold, and then straight up just like fidgeting with her breast, like squeezing it, and I'm pretty sure sucked on it at one point. Pretty sure.
Yeah, like
it's implied.
Yeah, I mean, with those scenes, they really sort of explore the space. They, you know, it's not long, but it feels long.
It's longer than it needed to be, basically.
Right. And it's even weird because it's like he's perving on this woman who, like, hates his guts. There's like no there's no ambiguity. It's not ambiguous, right? Like, it's he's always giving her kind of shit, and she absolutely has no interest in it. So
right. So then afterwards, even with like Mary Randall's character, who basically plays a lab tech in this, like, she goes and she takes a piss, and she kind of like, she goes and like sits down, and mind you, I had an immediate problem with the bathroom because I'm like, there's no walls from the toilet to the stall. Like,
yeah, it's weird that there's urinals.
Like
in the
there's
same room
so
where
much money you have into this by turning somebody invisible. You ask for walls in your bathroom. You need
right,
walls.
there's no stall. Yeah, there's no kind of stall separating. Yeah, and it's weird that it's like
You couldn't find
it's
an
one.
extra $1,000 for that.
It's like one bowl, and then like on the side there's like two urinals, and there's like lockers, and there's like it seems like it's implied that maybe there should be more than one person here at a time,
Oh,
but
so gross to even think about.
and also it's like she's already like everyone. What's weird is like what that earlier scene, the implication could be like, oh, he would never do that, right? Because again, he's in charge, he's successful. Why does he need to kind of fill up this other character? But at this point, everyone's freaking out. Everyone's just like, yeah,
Right.
this dude's trying to look at me pee or whatever.
Right. And so in the process, they like have a conversation because it basically become they have a conversation with everybody but Sebastian, saying that they're concerned that Sebastian's taking this too far, and the procedure to return him to visibility needs to happen. And in the process of trying to turn him back to being visible, it nearly kills him. I mean,
Yeah.
he was flatlined at a point. Like he was legitimately dead. No doubt
Yeah,
about it.
they had to intubate him to start breathing him. And
Right.
this is after the, 78 hours? It's supposed to be like a 3-day trial or,
Right.
and
It was supposed to be 72 hours, and then he was supposed to be back. And the next thing you know, they're like constantly trying to figure out the science of getting this back. And Sebastian is essentially quarantined in this lab. And I kind of feel for Sebastian here because, okay, unacceptable prank behavior behind, maybe it was just because he didn't. Maybe it was because he was so sure of himself that he thought everything would be fine, right?
yeah.
So
Well, I mean, the thing is, and this is again one of those things where like the story, the science is so soft, or just the story just is so convenient because it's like, okay, even when they're discussing turning him invisible in the first place, they had mentioned that they had done the procedure on 8 animals at this point successfully, right? There's like a bit of time that skips between the gorilla and him getting turned, right? So even with him being the creep or whatever, it's like, okay, well, they're gonna make him invisible anyways, and this is just a side effect of being invisible because the gorilla got all aggressive and they turned him back to normal, and then it was normal, right?
right. So that's a great point that you kind of point out.
So
because what if the side effect was?
Yeah.
What if the side effect was that what his personality basically came out a little bit more?
Sure. And
Like,
what trips me out too is like, okay, so you do the procedure on like 8 other, gotta assume different animals, right? Because there's gorillas, there's mice, there's dogs, all the animals are different, right? So the thing is, most creatures, little science for you, have very similar like DNA, right? Like the DNA of a gorilla and a human is like almost like 90% identical.
yeah, something
So
like that.
so why is it that doing it to a human being is so much more difficult than all these different animals? But I guess for the story to kind of take its twist, which it's kind of about to do, we need him to be invisible still. So
Right.
there you go.
So Sebastian is quarantined in his lab, and due to his condition, the other researchers basically construct like this latex mask for him, which does not help whatsoever. Like he looks creepy as fuck. Let me be fair there.
At least you can see him.
Yeah, but you could see it, right? For him to wear around the lab. But obviously, as the time goes by and you're not leading your normal life again, kind of gets a little bit interesting with this whole idea of quarantine and isolation,
Mm.
because now suddenly he's been there for 10 days and he just can't fucking handle it. Like he wants to go out, he wants to enjoy himself. Now, obviously, there's a difference between our quarantine versus his quarantine, but still, like I kind of understand like where he's kind of coming from there, right?
Very good. You brought it back. You made it relevant.
Right. So he decides to defy instructions and he goes back to his building. Everybody's kind of freaked out at this point because they're like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on? and he goes to retrieve basically some lab equipments. Once again, he notices his female neighbor disrobing inside her apartment. And I can immediately tell you, this is my cut that out. This is disturbing.
Agreed.
This is the scene that I even watching this movie again, I almost turned it off. I was like, no, too much for me. Like this is too much. So he does.
I mean, the one thing I at least will say is that there's this very suspenseful kind of tracking shot, and she's doing kind of the normal after work kind of thing, and it sort of like cuts to the next scene right before it's going to get like really bad. So
sure, but the
implication's terrible. So
essentially, what happens is that he goes and he's kind of thinking about it. He's like, no, you're crazy. What am I doing? And he goes and he then like doubles back and he's like, who would know? And it's like at that point I'm like, oh no, this is really happening. And then what proceeds to be a 10-minute scene. This feels like a 10-minute scene. Rona Mitra checking the door, and don't get me wrong, she's gorgeous. Her tits are all hanging out. We all know this, right? And here's a knock on the door. Opens the door while being fully robed and not really seeing anything, and then goes back, starts to kind of brush her hair again, tits hanging out, and he plays with the mirror, right, kind of making it look like it's shifted down, which okay, that can kind of happen sometimes. Maybe it's a loose whatever, but a mirror rarely ever shifts up. He decides to shift it up. And that's when she knows that the jig is up and something is wrong, and then proceeds to rape her. And it's at this point, at that point, I was already really on the fence against Sebastian, especially now watching it for only my second time. But at that point, I was like, no, you need to die. Like that's just that's a level I just can't. I can't get behind. So
I mean, I think even if there's a serum that turns you evil, there's a lot of kind of mischief you can get into while being invisible that doesn't have to go straight to just a bunch of like physical assault on, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's straight up sexual assault.
You could.
For most of this movie, he does sexually harass. He then goes to sexual assault, and then finally.
Think about it. You could go see any movie you want in the theater. If you're invisible, you can you can grab any kind of car and drive it around all invisible.
You could fuck with people in terms of like, somebody is like playing golf and you like steal their balls and they can't determine like what's going on. You like, you could be playfully mischievous.
Think about it, right? I mean, you're invisible, so you can just sneak on any plane, hang out in first class, go to any country you want.
What?
You go live in the Buckingham Palace. No one will know you're there. I mean, you can do anything.
So after he drives to, Linda warns Sebastian that if he leaves again, she and Matt will tell the committee about the experiment. By the way, we haven't mentioned this, but Linda and Matt are sleeping with each other. And
it's a secret to everybody.
Ignoring their threat, Sebastian assembles a device that basically runs a video loop. This is very similar to what Speed did of his heat signature. And of course, he decides to leave the lab again. In the process, he spies on Linda and Matt and becomes enraged when he sees them about to have sex. And because he has become increasingly unstable, he proceeds to kill a dog that was being used as a lab animal in the fit of rage. Which if the rape scene wasn't enough for me to cut out that scene, the dog scene's pretty bad too.
How about this? I'll call that one because
that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, look, the only way you can kill a dog in a movie is if you're Will Smith and it's about to turn into a zombie. I mean, that's the only time when it's acceptable, and it's still really sad.
So the team discovers that they've been watching this recording. and that Sebastian has basically been escaping without their knowledge. So first thing they do is that Linda and Matt go to Kramer's house, who again is the mentor of Sebastian, and confess their experiments. They know full well that this is going to ruin their careers, but they don't care anymore. Like they don't know exactly what's going on, and they feel like it's becoming more of a danger. Finally, the first thing that somebody knows smart. The next day, Sebastian waits until all of the team is inside the lab before he decides to disable the phones and the elevator codes, except for his own.
In that last scene, he also takes out Kramer.
He also takes out Kramer. He actually drowns him in a pool, which, again, it is kind of a cool scene because you're seeing basically water, Kevin Bacon, like taking out Kramer. I was like, okay, that's pretty decent for 2000 CGI.
And every time he gets like wet, it's cool because like you see kind of like his silhouette, and then as the water evaporates, it like evaporates him. The visuals in this movie are still cool, so that's a plus. That's the only good. That's like the good thing,
right? Of course, you know, once he disables everything, this is basically everybody's on full alert. And nobody is happy with anybody. In fact, Linda is straight up slapped by Sarah Kennedy, played by Kim Dickens. You know, for being such an idiot about this entire thing, which was a solid move in my eyes.
Fair.
Linda and the others hide in the lab, and while Matt and Carter take tranquilizer guns to hunt for Sebastian using these thermal goggles. And the first thing that actually happens is as they begin to escape, as they all kind of plan out and get together, is that he actually takes out oh God, I had her name. He takes out
Janice.
Mary Randall.
Yeah, Mary Randall.
Yeah, takes out Mary Randall by basically coming at her with by garroting her.
Yeah,
right?
he like chokes her with like a zip tie type of thing.
Right. So then he goes and he begins to kind of fight everybody, and it's kind of cool. One thing that is where I wish they would have signed this a little bit better is he's able to pick up what's the dude's name?
Greg Grunberg.
Yeah, Carter.
I mean, yeah.
He's able to pick him up, hanging from like the top pipes or whatever. He's able to pick him up by the neck and proceeds to like choke him, which is a cool effect. But I'm like, so does this shit give you like superpowers?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
this dude has at least 80 pounds on you.
You're right. It's less you're just invisible. Now you're kind of like have the like the super serum from the boys. Like you're invisible, but also you're fucking super strong, or something.
It's so okay, fine, and he just kind of tosses him aside, and he dies in the process because his neck basically careens off of he $1 million babies basically.
Yeah,
is the best way I could say.
Right. He doesn't go immediately. They try to save him. That's when Kim goes back to the lab, and she suspects that Sebastian's there. So while she's getting blood to try to save Carter, she starts throwing all over the place to try to splash it on him or see his footsteps,
which I was fine with. I don't mind. I didn't mind that idea because it was kind of neat, but it didn't matter because apparently he was already already passed her for some winds up taking the tranquilizer gun, shooting her, and then while she was tranquilized, snapping her neck in the process.
Yeah.
And finally with Frank, he just kind of like he locks Linda and Matt into a freezer and stabs Frank with like this pole that just like ejects out of him.
He has like this crazy type of like crowbar. He stabs Frank and he gets Matt, but Matt doesn't die, but he traps Linda and Matt in the freezer.
Right. Which, by the way, I was really interested in how the first thing that you know that the first thing that they did with Matt was pull the crowbar out of his stomach. I'm
Yeah,
like, isn't this how like Steve Irwin died? like,
right.
like I'm
Yeah,
like I'm like, maybe you should just leave that in or something like that. And then
right.
they
Like,
duct tape the whole fucking thing together. Like he had a
yeah.
block of him just duct taped together.
Well, yeah. So they just like Linda determines that none of his organs were hit. It's just a flesh wound. So
Sure.
stop the bleeding. You kind of can save him, right? And this leads to the point where Sebastian starts making kind of like this homemade bomb with the chemicals,
Yeah, this little
and
makeshift bomb.
he starts dressing himself up and putting his mask on and putting the fake hair on so he can escape.
Right.
And while this sort of is like our finale scene and it's interesting, it's like there's so many things you can nitpick here because it's like, okay, he cuts the line, smart, right? And it's like, look, like especially after kind of how he takes out Sarah, it's like with the tranquilizer gun, it's like, instead of doing all this weird try to pick everyone off one by one, break their neck or attack them, it's like you could have just tranked everybody from behind like a corner and you would have got away with this shit.
Right. Because
Honestly,
they
and
would have been
if
stuck there for days.
huh? Yeah, they would have been stuck there for days.
Yeah.
You could either snap all their necks or you could have just left them there while you got away. But I mean, his plan is I got to kill everyone so no one knows that I exist. But also, it's like if he had just left while um, Linda and Matt were in the freezer, he would have got away because no one would ever be able to find him again. Like,
Right.
it's not like there's just drones
That
flying
could
around looking
blow up
for
and
heat signatures. You know what I mean?
right. So he built this makeshift bomb, and I got to give credit to this is the one time they actually try to make science work in this, which is Linda goes and she makes a makeshift electromagnet to to escape the freezer, which using a defibrillator, which you know
Yeah.
what, I don't know if it would have worked, but what the fuck? Like, I'll give that to you because that was probably the smartest thing you've done all movie.
I think it probably would work scientifically, but also, why is there a defibrillator in a freezer?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. Well,
That whole scene, it just reminds me of that one scene in one of the scary movies, I guess, where what's her name? I don't know, the
I don't know
main
what
one.
they look like.
Yeah, like I feel like they take this scene, but instead of breaking out, she gives the guy a hand job or something. I don't know.
Right. So she also makes this like makeshift flamethrower, and just as Sebastian enters the elevator, Linda fires a flamethrower at him, which again I have to kind of question a little bit because what exactly is invisible here? like, like at this point, okay. Let me be fair. At this point, we don't know. Like once she like launches a flamethrower on him, why would he cook? Like he would cook, no problem. You would see a
Mhm.
flaming fireball of a person, but why would you start seeing his muscles again? Like, was it only his skin that was invisible? And if so, how did that still hide? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's
how would
weird,
we
right?
not be able to see his hair?
Because like yeah, as his skin gets torched, it kind of appears, and then as it flakes off, he turns invisible again.
Right. And whatever, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna do whatever. So
and we see something similar to that later too. But
right. So before Sebastian can kill Linda, Matt strikes him with the crowbar and gets him pretty good. I actually thought he was dead at this point. I totally forgot about how this movie actually ended. So um Sebastian recovers and approaches Matt and Linda from behind with this crowbar, but Matt defends the blow, throwing Sebastian to a nearby circuit breaker.
yeah, he does this sick ass block, it knocks his super metal, into circuit breaker, and Sebastian's electrocuted to shit. And
So
you can see,
then,
his like musculature and veins at this point.
right, okay.
Yeah,
So then, Linda and Matt try to defuse the bomb, realize they don't have enough time, so then they begin to climb a ladder in an elevator shaft to escape as this bomb explodes, which I don't know why this movie ended in this fashion, because it felt like you threw so much of a budget into this particular scene, which it would have been more satisfying not to see a makeshift bomb blow up an elevator, and then somehow they don't die, from this elevator that magically continues to miss them, even when this elevator actually hits her shoulder.
yeah,
you know by the way, Matt's fine with his duct taped ass.
right.
Like he can fight fully now. I always thought that
Yeah.
was really weird.
I mean, what's even more weird is like even though Sebastian's not technically invisible anymore, he's still somehow doing the stealth, get the drop on them,
Yeah, that makes no
fucking
sense.
thing. Yeah,
It makes no sense on him anymore. So Sebastian, despite his injuries, grabs Linda's ankle, is able to pull her off a ladder and onto the top of this elevator. In the process, he decides to do the whole "just give me one last kiss" and kisses her. And in the process, she releases the elevator by disconnecting the elevator cables, which causes Sebastian to fall to his death down the shaft. And Linda and
into the explosion.
Matt emerge from the burning lab, and emergency personnel take them away. Which again, this feels almost like an incomplete ending, because I'm like, isn't there like one last scene where it's like, oh, I found the research notes, that we had. It's probably best that we don't have it and decides to torture or whatever. It could have
Right.
not, oh, the paramedics came on time.
Yeah, the movie just sort of ends, and yeah, I mean that's the movie. There's again, like, you have the suspense thriller thing, right? But it's like they telegraph all of the beats, kind of, because it's like, maybe this guy's a creep. Maybe this guy's a creep. Yep, he's a creep.
Yep.
Maybe he's violent. Yep, he is violent.
All right, let's get into some takeaways to wrap this thing up. Leland, who is getting your That Guy award?
Oof, that guy. I mean, I guess Josh has to get it for kicking some ass at the end.
I guess, kind of.
Like, and don't get me wrong, while he's complicit in sort of everything going down, I don't know, he's the only person that seems that would behave remotely like any way a scientist would behave.
Yeah.
He has some sensibility.
Who is getting your That Chick award?
Oh, man. Well, here's the thing. I absolutely hate all of the research staff in this movie. And there is no other females besides Rona Mitra. Or, I mean, I guess there's, Kramer's wife. She's in it for 3 seconds. So, yeah, the both of them. For not having any snarky lines.
Fair enough. That Fool award.
Oh,
Oh, geez, I wonder who it's going to be.
You know what? I mean, you know what the obvious answer is, so let's skip
the
that.
obvious. Go for the obvious.
Well, the obvious one would be Sebastian, right?
It is.
But I think... Huh?
There's nobody else. Everybody else is just a dumb researcher.
Nope. You know what? Who gets it? Again, another tie. It's going to be Frank and Carter. One for Carter being like, yeah, Sebastian's cool, and then totally just getting destroyed by him. And then Frank for just standing there while he gets killed by Sebastian. Like, he was going to die.
Cut that out.
Yep. You know what it is. Yep. Look, you know what? The dog scene where he kills the dog. That was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. Does this movie age well?
Ooh. Here's what's funny about this movie. Graphics-wise, I would say the visuals are still pretty good. And that there's parts where it's just like, okay, that looks weird, that's weird, but when you kind of take the whole scene as a whole, it's like, wow, that's really cool. Um, I think the big problem in this movie is just the story, the characterization. Like,
And the
here's the
right.
thing: I really like Paul Verhoeven as a director, right?
Why?
You have movies like RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Basic Instinct, where it's just like there's these layers of depth to them, and there's like none of that here. In fact, it's like the opposite. It's all surface. It's all shallow.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hold up, but not for the reason you would think, you know?
And finally, is there an iconic scene to this movie?
Ooh boy. Yeah, but it's it's nothing you really want to remember. So, the thing.
How about this? The scene you like the most?
Oh, I liked the most. Uh, I mean, I guess the gorilla like reappearing after they figured out the reversion serum. That's a really good scene. Unfortunately, the scene I remember most is the one with Sarah with Sebastian creeping up on her. Like the sad thing is, I watched this movie kind of like young, and while I was just like, oh, it's a scary movie with some adult stuff, but like now as an adult, like it's like I could clearly remember all the scenes where they're implying that Sebastian's about to victimize one of these women, and it's
Right.
just like, yep, that happened exactly the way I remembered it.
Yeah,
Gross.
it's pretty fair.
Yeah.
All right, so my That Guy award is going to go to, I guess, you know what? I'm going to give it to none of the research staff, and not Sebastian. I'm actually going to go ahead and give this to William Devane because he plays the role as straight of a military guy that you can kind of expect him. That's why he was cast further in roles like that. At the end of the day, yes, he appreciates the genius that Sebastian is, but he needs to see results, 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 results.
All right.
And
Plus,
once
he's like, you're a fucking asshole.
right, once he realizes that the jig is up and something is wrong, instead of trying to rectify the situation, he says, "No, the next thing I'm going to do is destroy this project, cancel it forever." I'm sorry, this is not going to help save your guys' careers, but you guys tried, and that's pretty much it. And you know what? That's pretty stand up. Like that's what you're supposed to do. You know, that chick award, I'm gonna give it to Dr. Sarah, the veterinarian, because
Yeah.
okay, snarkiness aside, and it's bad with her. There is something that she does care. She does care to make sure that the animals are okay, and she does care to make sure that they're still alive. She is proud of the success initially. When she realizes that they've all been lied to, like she's the one that's just like so pissed off because
Yeah.
like, are you fucking kidding me with this
Yeah.
shit? Which is the most proper reaction to this. Like, fuck you. Like you just. I'm pretty sure I just got molested by this guy.
Yeah. Like, she's just not drinking the Kool-Aid.
No, she isn't. And I love the fact that she slapped the shit out of Elizabeth Shue because I'm like, thank you. That is what people should do to characters who make bad decisions.
Yeah. Exactly. I think
Uh,
I have an idea who that. Well, go ahead.
all right, this Fool Award is going to go to Sebastian. It's pretty clear why.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Sebastian is everything you wish a genius not to be. It's like
Yeah.
and here's the thing, you know that there's probably people out there that probably idolized him or yeah, you got yours in, buddy.
Yeah, he's definitely like a proto Rick Sanchez, but just all the bad shit and nothing really funny about it.
Right. It's not funny at all. In fact, it's downright horrifying for me.
Yeah.
And because of that, you have this culture of people that probably look at somebody like Sebastian and it's just like, yeah, when he molested that chick while invisible. That was pretty funny. And it's like I see that, and it does not fit in today's world whatsoever. 20 years
I
later,
mean, they sort
it
of
didn't
make a
fit back then either. But
no. I mean, they sort of kind of make this attempt to sort of humanize him a little bit earlier in the movie, but the idea is that either the power of being invisible, the psychological effects of not being able to be a normal person anymore, or just some effect of the chemical just drives you batty. So, like, anything that might have been redeemable about the guy, it, like, disappears the second he turns invisible.
right, it's kind of like, what if the chemical is the one that's to blame, which is completely fair. I,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, would like to have seen this movie kind of gone a little bit down that route, and not necessarily need a redemption from Sebastian, but just for him to kind of like come to a realization of his ways a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and just says, "Wow, no, I am a real fucking monster," or he goes,
Yeah.
whichever way. Cut that out. Pretty obvious. It's the rape scene. Everything about the scene is uncomfortable. This movie is an hour and 50 minutes long, and for whatever reason, this particular scene took up way too much time
Yeah.
for what was basically implied. You could have literally cut out that scene and ended at the line of what Sebastian said and leave it to complete suspense, which
Right.
probably makes Sebastian a little bit more redeemable, because you're saying, wow, I can't believe he just suggested that. What a fucking monster. Yeah, but you didn't see it. Did it actually happen? So if that's
Yeah.
done, maybe things would have been a lot better with the character.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's weird, right? Because Paul Verhoeven has this sort of reputation of using like violence a lot, and there's some straight up bloody, gory scenes, but it's just like the there's never like a this movie doesn't really have a dark tone to it. Like, it's, don't get me wrong, it's, the implications are really bad, right? But it's almost like almost cartoonish in the way they
Almost
explore the
popcorn
themes.
flickers, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. So, like, just
so how do
having,
you popcorn flick rape is my question. Like, I can't,
yeah,
no,
it's not, it's not like it's like,
because it was every definition of it. It was absolutely clear what it was.
no, for sure. And while we don't see the actual like physicality of it, it's just like it's hard to see what the movie's talking about. Is it talking about how this guy was irredeemable in the first place? Was the power given to him corrupting? Did he, like, did the actual effect cause a cycle? Like, it's just like, yeah, here's this guy. He's going to do this thing. He's going to progressively get worse and do some bad stuff, but you never really understand why or what it's trying to say, or it doesn't even have like the basic like science can be bad or the military can be bad. Like, there's no. It's just like there's this guy who's just gonna like do some messed up stuff and kind of just turn
Right,
on the people closest to him.
right. So that's my cut that out. Does this movie age well? No.
No,
You could. There's a reason why there was a remake, basically a remake to this movie, or a remake to the original story of this, and why that remake is absolutely wonderful, because it actually takes a very serious tone with this film, and it kind of has pretty strong implications of like where it could go from here. But at the same time, you say towards the end of it, wow, that was that was a really excellent movie. I'd really like to see where this goes. In this movie, I don't care anything about the characters. I don't care anything um, about what is happening. I felt bad for Rowan and Mitra, and I felt bad for the dog. You know,
right. I mean, I feel bad for Kramer and his wife. They got messed over.
yeah,
I mean, the actual hero of this movie is Elizabeth Shue's Linda McKay, and it's like it feels like she's all over the place, right? Because she feels for him, but doesn't really want to be with him. she wants to kind of be with Josh, but also he doesn't fully validate him by admitting to the relationship. And I
Right.
mean, it's only implied that
No, you bring up good points.
right. She's the hero. She's the first build character, and like she only survives, or it seems like she only survives because like, well, we need someone to be the actual hero at the end. But it's like it's not earned. You know,
No,
it's not like you should like her. It's like while he's being a prick and super like aggressive to her, you know, she's throwing it back, shutting him down, and I get that it's like, all right, she's rising to sort of, push, she's foiling him, but at the same time, it's like at this point, we're talking about this guy who thinks he's legal. We could all assume that he's legally insane, right?
right.
Instead of just like reporting him in or shutting him down or whatever, you kind of keep playing with that fire until everyone else gets burnt, and then you get to walk away. Especially when you could have just shut it down from the beginning and be like, yeah, no, we figured out how to do the reversion chemical. He just lied because he wants more control of the project.
Right.
And no movie.
Right. And finally, iconic scene. I mean, for me, the iconic scene is always going to be the graphics of this movie. Look, for 2000, the graphics are pretty stellar for exactly that time frame.
Yeah.
Yes, they're aged now, but you could really look at this. You could really look at that like gorilla scene and be like, you see this? We took time with this scene to get this right, get this particular scene right.
Yeah, I think with that scene, with the scene where he becomes invisible, and I think the scene where he almost reverts back and then turns invisible again, like those scenes are still like visually good, like
Right.
I don't know, it's kind of like the Jurassic Park thing where it's just like, yeah, the T-Rex still holds up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some quick hits so we can finish this up. And this can go by really quick. I'm just going to give you 5. So, an anatomically correct, totally working computer model was created of Kevin Bacon's entire body down to the last capillary. The 3D model has since been donated to scientific researchers. Fascinating. Despite assumptions that Bacon would not be needed on set, except when his character Sebastian is visible, Verhoeven and the crew realized after test footage was shot that he would need to be present to interact with the staff, as the other actors were stranded in an empty space and the scenes looked stiff, inorganic, and unconvincing without
Yeah.
him. Guy Pearce and Edward Norton were initially considered for the role of Sebastian. Kevin Bacon was chosen for his ability to both be charming and diabolical. Most visual effects shot involved up to 7 different plates. In most cases, one plate consisted of an empty shot of the scene background where the movements of an invisible Kevin Bacon were later matched. And finally, because of the graphic nature of the layer-by-layer invisibility transformation, some production publicity photos indicated a different type of transformation. One particular publicity photo had Kevin Bacon invisible from the chest down, with the remainder of his body being visible, which contradicted with the transformation in the movie, where one layer of his body become invisible, exposing the underneath layer.
Mm.
And that's going to do it for this particular movie. I apologize. This should have been a movie that I should have been a little bit more excited about. But once it hit that rape scene, it kind of almost took me completely out of the movie. And I hate that the first episode that you're back on with us, that this is this particular movie. But you will be here for the rest of the month. I'm very happy to have you for the rest of the month, because it makes the show keep churning through.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I mean, yes, this is no Point Break or The Matrix.
No, it isn't. But next week's movie is going to be pretty spectacular. So let the people know where they can find you.
Okay, you can find me at Leland Hairston on Instagram and Twitter, and Leland Hairston on Facebook.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
you can always find me on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at David J. Junef. I'm the co-host here with normally my Back to the Classics co-host Jay Alonso, but he's taking a little bit of sabbatical. He's been kind of working his ass off, so I'm going to leave him to that. As always, please follow the Back to the Classics Movie Talk Group Facebook page where we are discussing literally anything and everything. There's been a lot of great posts that are going on there, as well as BTTC Podcast Facebook page as well, and the Instagram page, BTTC Podcast as well. For those who need help editing videos or need help editing their podcasts, for any ideas they need there, please check out beatnetworkonline.com/Beat Studios and get in contact with us, or you can reach out to me personally, and I'd be very, very happy to work with you and to see how we can go ahead and make your visual or audio presentation as good as possible. As always, please make sure you check out the rest of our shows, The Noise, Melanin Boulevard, as well as Turn My Mic Up, which is still continuing on. 20v20, I know there was a problem this past week. So I think we're trying to work out a little bit something there, but I am possibly going to be on one. I don't know yet. We're still kind of deciding on that. So thank you guys so much for giving us a listen and watching this through YouTube. Make sure that you reach out to us for any questions, comments, or concerns. I'd be very happy to interact with you guys. One final thing that I want to hit to the people of Beirut. You're definitely in our thoughts and prayers. The explosion that happened today in your city is absolutely horrifying. I hope as we get more information down the road that the people that are suffering is going to find a little bit of relief from this, and that we can move on from this safely. So with that being said, I'm your guy, Danger Neff, and with me is my co-host,
Leland Hairston, Lund Hairston.
This is Back to the Classics. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.